Hello and welcome to Meet the Eatmons Endangered Species Podcast, where we inspire, uplift, and spotlight families and leaders who are doing something that stands out in today's world. We're your hosts, Curtis and Spring Eatman, and we're so excited for you to be here with us today. So what we got to talk about today? What are we going over?
Man, we got a lot to talk about today. And this conversation is, I'm kind of going through it. It's like, we're going to talk about the traditional family. And like, is it really under attack? You know, who benefits from a broken home? I think that's very, very important because you got single parent households, you got two parent households. Like, what is the nuclear family supposed to look like if that's supposed to look like something? So we're going to really get into it today, in that conversation. Right.
I like it.
Yeah.
Let's get into it.
Okay, let's go. So the real question is, first one I have for you is, have we normalized a fatherless home?
Okay, yeah. So let's get into it. Put on your goggles. We're going deep. Okay. No.
Yeah.
So
it's gonna be different.
I think that it has become very normalized. I come from a single parent home. And my father was definitely in the picture, but not in the home. And I think that was pretty much a norm across my whole family.
Interesting.
We
Okay.
have a lot of mothers, not a lot of dads in the home. And I think that was very normal community wide growing up. And I think that stems from a lot of things. The normalization of it, I think we can draw back to, as far back to slavery, honestly, when you
Yeah.
think about the whole like Willie Lynch syndrome,
Yeah.
taking the families apart, feminine, giving men more of a feminine identity, whipping them, embarrassing them, that kind of thing, giving women more of a masculine identity, separating the family units, all of those different things, as well as that going into like the 1960s, 1970s, where there was a governmental push for that, where Black families, if they needed assistance, if there was a man in the house and they weren't able to qualify for certain benefits or needs,
True.
they weren't able to go and work and all these different things. And so I think that definitely there has been a lot of institutionalized things that have created this wave, especially in the Black community, of the torn down family unit, and making that a norm. I do think today that we're making a lot of strides to work against that narrative. I see a lot more families working together, a lot more men stepping up and staying in the home and being good fathers and all those different things.
Beautiful.
But I think it's important for families for us to make a point to normalize having the entire nuclear family together in the home again.
Because it's interesting, when you start really looking at because the question is, have we normalized the fatherless home? Like, and so, when I hear, normalizing means we made it something that's acceptable,
Yes.
and as it's something that's become, that's just something that we do on a normal basis now. So when you think about, for me, when I think about someone that's not in the home, because we have two different experiences, right? You said, in the community that you grew up in, your father wasn't there all the time, right?
Right.
My dad was there, right? So then when I hear that as being a norm, but I had friends, colleagues, and everything else that didn't have that. So I can see the difference. I can see the difference between the children that were raised in a house when they had their father, and you can see the difference when they didn't have their father. And it wasn't something that's loud. It was more on a identity standpoint. It was understanding, like, where did their strength come from? Like, where did their love come from? And it's interesting that when you don't have the father in the household, then the mother has to play both sides.
Right.
Right? So they have to figure out how to, especially if they have sons, right? How do I raise a son? How do I raise a man when you're not a man?
Right.
And so then you have to put them in sports so another coach can start developing them and things like, you have to figure out other alternative ways to do it. So when I hear that question, and I just process it myself, I'm saying, like, congratulations to all the fathers that are stepping up, number one.
Yeah.
Because you have no clue of what you're sowing into your children. Especially, I'm just thinking about even like my dad pouring into my sister. right? Because that was her first love, seeing what a man's like. And then pouring into me saying, this is how you take care of your mom. This is how you take care of family. This is how you protect, you provide stability, security. And then if I removed him out the situation, how would my mindset be in regards to that? How would my sister's mindset be when it looks at as a man, right?
Right.
So then you have to search. And again, I can't speak on that because I had that in my house, but I can also, again, see the difference for those that didn't have that as well.
Right.
So I have much respect for the fathers that step into that role to do that.
Right.
Because it's power behind it.
Right. 100%. 100%. I think it does affect people, the way that they grow up. I'm very fortunate that although my father wasn't in my home, that he was still a presence in my life. Big. And I still had a lot of really strong men in my life, like my grandfather, my uncle. Sure. I had men that really still gave me that. So I don't feel like I necessarily had that, broken pieces, that kind of experience, because I do think that happens a lot. A lot of young girls, when they don't have their father in their home, they end up searching for love or searching to fill that void in a lot of different ways as they're growing up. And so I'm grateful that I didn't have that. And I also was, given the opportunity to get a close relationship with God very, very young. And I think that's what made me stay in that mindset also of like, hey, God is my ultimate father. He's with me wherever I go. And so I think that helped me not have that lack perspective as well. But yeah, that's really good.
It's interesting because, we're doing some research on this topic. And again, we're talking about have we normalized, again, fatherless homes. And some of our research says that simply a shift in cultural norms. But the argument is that a result of government incentives had made it easier to raise children without a father.
Yeah, like in the 1960s and 70s, like we were talking about. It was so funny. My mom and I was talking to my mom the other day, and she's like, oh my gosh, I'm watching one of my favorite movies from when I was younger. You should watch it. Go on YouTube and look it up. It was with James Earl and I can't think of her name. Anyways, I want to say it's called Claudine, this movie Claudine, and it's like in the 70s. And so I'm watching this movie, and it's about this mom. She's a black single woman. She cleans homes for a living, under the table, being treated any old kind of way. She meets a guy. She's got 6 or 7 kids.
Okay.
She meets a guy, and he wants to like really fall in love with her. He falls in love with her kids, and he wants to take care of them. But because they were on the social worker would come by, and she would say, oh, are you dating? Oh, then we're gonna have to take money from you. Oh, do you have a man in your home? Oh, we have to take money from you. Oh, did you make money this week? Oh, we have to take money. Did the man that you're dating, did he give you any gifts? We have to deduct money from you. And it was just such an eye-opener, like, wow, that is crazy that's what people used to go through. So it was an incentive for them not even to look for love or look for those relationships. And the gentleman who wanted to be in the family, he ended up pulling himself away from it because it was too difficult. Because then all of a sudden, when he wanted to marry her, then the government started telling him like, okay, well now this and this and this is your responsibility, and if you want to do that, then we're gonna take this from you. And we're gonna gorge your wages and all of these different things. Garnish your wages. Yeah. And he almost ended up stepping away because of that. Wow. So it was such an incentive. And it was at the end, I told my mom, I was like, this was the most depressing movie I've ever seen in my life. Like at the end, sad. They just decide to get married anyway. And they all end up going to jail because like even the baby, they're going to jail because the son was a Black Panther. It's a whole thing. But I was just like, whoa, this is a lot. And my mom was like, well, that was our reality. This is the type of movies that we had because this was the reality that we were living in growing up. Wow. And so it really did kind of shine a light for me, like, yeah, that was really an issue. And although today it's not as bad, it is still a certain mindset that's instilled that, we don't want to have 2 incomes. Right. We want to keep our income low at a certain amount of money so that when we're able to keep the assistance because we need the assistance. So we become assistant dependent instead of relationship dependent.
Yeah, I mean, and then you look at the numbers. I'm looking at it right now. It says, according to the U.S. Census Bureau, this in 2023, clocked in, it said 24 million children in America, which is 1 in 3, live without a biological father at home.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah. And says this has been linked to higher crime rates. Think about this. So higher crime rates, lower academic achievement,
Wow.
okay, and increased poverty levels.
Sheesh.
So there's definitely a result or a consequence for taking a pillar out of the household.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. Wow. So so it's another question. So has the normalization of a single parent household helped or hurt our society?
I think it's definitely hurt our society in a certain light. I think that we end up having more and more women that are circumstantially being forced to become both roles, like you said.
Yeah.
And so then, it reminds me of this whole like soft girl era that's going around right now on social media. And it's like the reason why that's going around is because in our community, so many Black women have not had the opportunity to be soft because they've had to be two roles and had to tap into their masculinity. And then it's so interesting because then you hear a lot of men say, oh, I don't want to date Black women because they're hard or because they're this or that. But it's like, well, you're perpetuating the problem here with that whole mindset, because the reason why they don't have the opportunity to be soft is because they have to be hard to deal with all of the issues, right? And be, everything to everyone. So I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, there's always multiple perspectives when it comes to this topic, of course, and we're not here to say that we're experts on it. We're just giving our opinion.
Yeah.
And I think about if it takes two to tango to create one.
Yeah.
Right. And then you can't create one you can't even create someone by yourself. It takes two to create one. So how can you raise one by yourself?
Yeah.
That's kind of my process of it. Like, it's always going to be something off. Right. And you have to go search from somewhere else to be able to receive that. So, I think that, if we call this a unfortunate consequence of a generational curse. So if it's happened, you can break that curse in your household, but find the right one. We're not saying just go get married and start having, just because you just need two people. But we're saying find the right one with the right principles, the right values. And it's interesting because we're talking about, things that incentivize, right? And you even think about like corporate America, the incentivization of not performing.
Right.
Like, so if I'm an employer or an employee, and I look at you, I'm like, okay, I'm trying to get the most out of you while paying you the less amount, right? And then you look at me saying, you're trying to get the most out of me without having to do the what? The most. You're right. Yeah. Most work. So the relationship basically together already is saying, we're not trying to give each other our best. Like, that's basically what it's saying, right? So it's already an off situation. And I think about it the same way when you think about these programs that incentivize taking fathers of the household. It's telling the wife or telling the mother or telling the single mom or a single dad in this situation too, if you want to use an example of that, is don't look for love. Don't look for things that are going to help you grow. Don't look for your highest capacity or abundance, because if you don't look for those things, we'll incentivize you and pay you more.
Right.
Right. So it's interesting what you said. So that's just question one. All right. So let's get to the next one, which is pretty interesting, which is, do you think the government is replacing fathers?
Whew.
What a question.
Do I think they are? No. I don't think they are. I think that that there is a dependence to or a lure of dependence to make it seem that way, like to replace the income, replace the, that kind of a thing. But are they? No. I don't think you can replace a father figure in someone's life with financial means, with, food stamps, with all of these different things. I think that it's such an important thing that creates a wholeness in a child when they have their father in the house with them. And so, I've been so blessed to watch you, raising our kids, and the security that our kids get from you. Just even our oldest, she's 17 years old in April.
She's 16. Okay, I just felt you rushing it. I just felt her rushing it. I was like,
April,
slow it
she's
down.
17 years old
cool,
in April.
All right, cool.
And even her big self, she's taller than me. And just to see the way she just jumps in your arms, and the way that you can see that she has this security with her when it comes to having her father. Now, I'm not saying that every relationship, it doesn't mean that just because the father is not in the home, that the father is not present.
Not at all.
And so that's a difference.
Yeah.
And that, I think, part of the whole start of this issue is understanding, like, don't play with fire unless you're ready to get burnt. So it's like, people, you are dealing with someone based off of your attraction, based off of, whatever you want to get out of them, the way they make you feel, but not really thinking about, is this somebody that I want to create as a life partner?
Long run.
Right? For the long run. And so it's so important, because people, they completely mess up their lives every single day just because they got connected to the wrong person too early in their life, where they didn't have a way of realizing that person was about to be connected to them for the rest of their life. It's all fun and games until it's not, right? And choosing the wrong person can really change the course of your life and that child's life. And so that's why it's so important to consider these things early in a relationship as well. And I gotta always go right back to, that's the covenant. That's what God created, sex to be between a man and a wife. Now, have we all been perfect in that area? No, but that's okay. The thing is like, is that what you're striving to do? Are you striving to do that? And are you consulting God with the people that you're choosing to have in your life? Or are you just allowing your lust, which is probably letting the enemy lead, right? Yeah. So that's how you end up in these situations to begin with.
So the first consequence leads to another consequence,
right?
Which is this consistent consequences long run.
Yes, and you know what's so crazy about that is that you don't get to choose your consequence. You only get to choose your choice. You get to choose your decision and your choice, but you don't get to choose the consequence.
Sure don't.
And so that's why you got to choose wisely, because you don't even realize sometimes that as you're doing something, the decision that you're making, even though it might be the wrong decision, you're making it and you're saying, I know there may be a consequence to this. It could be a consequence this big, or it could be a consequence this big, but you don't get to choose.
Sure don't. Your
the outcome of that consequence.
Yeah, your consequences don't consult you.
Exactly.
They don't give you notification.
Exactly.
Because if we all knew what the consequence was, we would probably think about the decision a little bit differently.
Retrospect is always 2020, baby. Always. You from looking back, you're like, oh my gosh, how did I do that? That was clear as day. But that's why it's important, because you never know when you're making a very life pivotal decision that can change the entire course of your life.
That's crazy. So, yeah, I'm just looking at, some of the facts that was done on research on this concept. Is talking about how, like, you have to indirectly contribute to the decline of marriage rates, right? So this conversation, based on these incentives, based on these things that the government has given us, welfare programs or things that is unintended to provide that support. It talks about, again, marriage rates, low income communities, and all that has indirectly been a decline because of those programs. So the covenant you're talking about, those things that provide security, provide safety, provide, you were talking about peace in a household, or those principles and values being transferred to the next generation, they are literally don't have a foundation because of those programs.
Right.
Or not to say those programs don't add value.
Right.
But that's a whole nother conversation, in my opinion, is that it's to help you, but not to be assisted on long term. Right. It's supposed to get you up. Right.
Correct.
So I think that
it's assistance, not dependence. Yes. And so I can say I've been on welfare, I've been on WIC, I've been on, all of these different government programs myself, grew up on them and, didn't want to have to depend on them, found myself to be a single mother and ended up needing those different things, food stamps and all the things. And it's very interesting because it's so easy to get in a need space and get assistance, but become dependent on what should just be assistance. And so I think that those programs are gateways to, you have to have a very strong mindset to say, I'm going to get myself out of this situation, because very easily you will settle yourself for a lack life because you're trying to make sure that you don't make too much so that you keep your, food stamps, so you keep your WIC, you keep your this and that. And then you put yourself in a position where, man, God had all these other blessings for you, but because you keep holding on to this scarcity, then you end up trading your blessings and you're throwing your pearls before swine.
I mean, I just think about us running a business and how many people we come across when we're interviewing, and those that have such calling on their lives or have so much gifts, talents, and abilities, and you can see the upside on them. You're like, oh my gosh, you got such a major anointing. But then they may have an assistance program right now, and they're like, well, you need to go do this and this. But no, I can't show I make this money, because if so, I'll lose this. I'm like, that's pennies compared to what you're worth, your value. But that has now, but unfortunately they've been so dependent on that their identity
is attached to
that, where unfortunately it's not tied to what their heir to the throne is. So
exactly,
that's a whole other combo.
That's why you have to, whether your father is in the home or not, you have to go get your identity from the Heavenly Father.
Oh yeah,
the one that created you. Receive your identity from there and go get what you deserve, not with what they're handing out to you.
Your birthright.
So yeah, I mean, if you need it, go get it, use it, do what you got to do. But just don't let yourself get caught up in being stuck there, so that you're not allowing your life to excel because of the dependence on these programs.
That's good. You must have an exit strategy. Don't start something without an exit.
Amen.
All right. That's it. So the question number 3, and it's our last question. So hopefully you've been enjoying this combo, which is about the nuclear family and who really benefits from, again, broken homes. But my last question for you, babe, is who benefits from the breakdown of the family?
Definitely. I think the government is has I wouldn't say 100% benefits, but I definitely think that there is an incentive to the government to create these generational welfare families, and I definitely know that I have been one of those. My family has needed assistance in the past, for different generations needing that stuff. And it's very easy, but it's very important for us not to be controlled and not to allow ourselves to, be held up by those different programs and things like that. There's that instability of and lack of support in your own efforts in your own community. Sometimes it creates that dependence and creates that economic control that they have. So they know that if you're dependent on them, then they can have control over you, control over your life, control over where you spend your money, control over how much you make, control over, your needs. And then you're going to vote based off of the dependence that you have, and then
that's
all
deep.
Of these different things. So I think that there is a there is definitely an incentive for the government to keep us in a certain place. But I think it's important for us to know our own worth and get out of that space. So what would you say in that area?
No, I'm with you on that. I think there's a direct correlation, between instability, insecurity is tied to a lot of that, what we're just talking about here right now. And when I think about just a family, and we talking about a strong family. And I have this conversation all the time. Like, what does a strong family produce?
Yeah.
Right? And what's a strong family, so that we're all clear on the definition? It's a family that has principles, values, morals, right? They understand what they tolerate. They understand what they don't tolerate. They have a clear identity of who they are as a family, right? And when you say, what does a strong family produce? Well, they produce leaders.
Yeah.
They produce leaders. And, I have a question all the time. We do a lot of different workshops around the country in regards to helping people with financial literacy, entrepreneurship, and just really understanding how to scale their life to a whole different level with their gifts, talents, and abilities. And my number one question I always ask is, how many people sit down with their family every week with no phones, no nothing, and just have a conversation?
Very few.
It's
Very few.
literally less than 10% every time in the room. And I'm talking the room's always packed, double digits, no matter what, or sometimes triple digits and so forth and so on. But it's always less than 10%. And so, how do you break a curse? Well, first you got to be aware that it is a curse, number one. And then you have to say, okay, we're going to break it by putting resources and systems together. So if you're not doing that right now, you can start that moving forward. You can start the strong family moving forward, because that is literally transferred. That's what you want. Because ultimately, when you have a strong family, you're producing now what? Strong families. And when you produce strong families, you're producing strong leaders. And leaders, everything rises and falls on leadership at the end of the day.
Yes.
So to me, when we're looking at this and we say single families and we're saying, different things like that, of these assistance programs, is government replacing it? Is fathers not being in the house replacing it? Ultimately, it's an attack on leadership.
Yes.
Because if we have less leaders, then we have less what? Opportunities to change things.
Right.
All right. So we have a scarcity of leadership today, more than anything. And the best way to do it is having a strong family, because then you have a clear identity of who you are. And if you don't have a clear identity, then you search for things to try to fill it up.
Correct.
That's where mental illness comes in, because that's nothing to do with your core values.
That's so good.
So that's what I think about when it comes to that.
That is so good, babe. I feel like the scariest person is somebody that's a thinker-doer. Somebody that can think for themselves, that can process for themselves, and also can execute for themselves, that they don't need assistance, they don't need all these things. And that is the greatest gift that we can give to our children and to the next generation, is to create leaders that are thinker-doers. And so that is such a big, big deal to what you were just saying. And I think you're 100% on course with that.
I think we can go way more deeper into this conversation,
Absolutely.
but we're gonna end this based on the time that we have together. Hopefully, it was able to add some value in regards to the perspective of a nuclear family and who really gets to gain from it. We want to give many perspectives, because she comes from a family of single parents, and having those that step into the role to be able to support that. I come from a 2-parent home. You come from being a single mom yourself to obviously being married, blended family. We have a lot of different, again, value perspectives that we can add to this conversation. So we would love to hear from you. What do you think about it? What do you think about what's going on in regards to the nuclear family? And can we actually break the curses that have been, I guess you would say, making those incentive programs something that's been dependent on? So with that, look around, and if you see any other families that can benefit from this conversation, if you see anybody that could receive some more value from what we just spoke about, please share the content. We would love to get that. Any closing remarks before we close?
I would just say that it's so important for us to understand the power that we have as individuals, as leaders, as thinker-doers, and as endangered species. So we're excited for you all to understand the importance of the value that you create in the world. And it's not just important that you become a thinker and you become a doer and that you go and pave your own way, but it's vital so that we can create this species that becomes unendangered.
Please.
The species of leadership. So we're so excited for you guys to be with us today. We hope that you enjoyed this today. Go ahead and tag somebody that you think might want to hear this information.
For sure.
And we will see you next time on Meet the Eatmons Endangered Species.
See you guys.